Sanborani Dumelang again. We are here basically at the Ideathon, really engaging on all things cyber security. We have the privilege of really having an amazing panel. I've seen a lot of these faces in the industry over the last couple of years, and I know that they've got a lot to share, both with the people who are here in person, and also I know that we've got a community of people who are joining us from all over the country. Joining us online. This is going to be an engaging discussion, really looking into deciphering and understanding basically what's happening in the landscape broadly. So let's get into the business of the day. I mean, we've heard of fourth industrial revolution and so forth, and we've seen how COVID accelerated digital penetration somehow. Somehow more and more people were forced to move online and so forth, and we know that we have not really done a lot, and I think you mentioned it, Mr. Muzi, that we've got powerful devices, but we are really underutilizing these devices. Digital literacy and also the cybersecurity culture that was also mentioned. How do we ensure that the connected citizen or our citizens actually become safe, or they build the culture of security as they go online and do what they do online? Let me start with you, that they jump.
I knew sitting here was going to be interesting. But anything I say wrong, my colleagues here will do.
Yeah, sure.
So I've got two views on that.
Okay.
Technology should be transparent. We haven't made it transparent enough yet. We still have to teach technical to use it. Right? I had to teach my father to use a computer so I could communicate with him. By the way, he's just turned 90, so if the genes are right, I'm going to be following on from him. Now, think about people like me, 30 years on from now. What kind of technology are we going to be able to use? It cannot be seen as technical, it's got to work. And if it has to work, we have to design in the necessary security that no one worries about. That brings back to trust. Notice I'm not using technology as the answer, but technology has to deliver where we need to go. And then we come back to the simple things. It's about identity. How do I represent myself? Well, I was playing with some stuff. Actually, I was being played with by people who like to make me dizzy with their intellect. It's fun, by the way, but I get used to it. Putting my face on strange things and putting my voice on things I didn't say. So identity is becoming serious. That technology, we have to learn how to make that technology provably, demonstrably trustable, so that people will want to use it. And then when they use it, it must be helping, not getting in the way. I don't want a degree in IT to be able to use my phone. Okay? That's not a joke, by the way. How much technology do you need to know to use the applications on your phone? I used the grandma test. If you hand your phone to your grandma, will she be able to use it without you standing over her shoulder saying, "Press here, Granny"? It's not there. We're not there yet. That's where we need to be.
Let me invite you to just add, what are your thoughts on this?
So I've made some notes. I'll be referring to my phone every now and then. So I think education is super important. When it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, we need to be educated on safe online practices, implementing strong solutions, authentication mechanisms, for example, and then also ensuring that our data is protected with encryption and other security measures. But I think it's quite important to stay up to date with the latest cybersecurity issues, threats, and vulnerabilities. And as technology progresses, I think it's going to open us up to more and more threats and issues. So this subject matter is going to become increasingly important, and it's definitely a growth area. So everyone in this room is in the right place, I think, to learn about cybersecurity.
Awesome. Mr. Muzi, I don't know if you want to just add a thing.
Yeah, I think mine would just be on awareness. Towards every holiday, you you're reminded to buckle up. Speed kills. Don't overtake where you're not supposed to overtake. I don't know because I don't have a TV, but I've never seen a single ad that speaks to how to behave, awareness on the cyberspace, right? So we are in an era right now that is largely driven by technology. And for the normal citizen, it's those that are employed may probably be privileged because at work you maybe constantly get reminded what to do, change your password, don't fall prey to this, be mindful of that. But who does that for the ordinary citizen, as you asked? The second biggest concern that I've got as well is we've exposed our kids to this space, And it's one of the conversations I was having with T to say, how many parents have got oversight? They can tell me now that between 6 last night and 6 this morning, what were your kids up to on the internet? Who knows? So we are blindsided. So I think the awareness is actually something that we also need to drive more. It needs to be a campaign that we invest in as well, because unfortunately there's no going back. The only way now it's forward, So we need to acknowledge that we are here, and being here has got its own risks, and we identify those risks and we demystify some of the things for the ordinary citizen. Then I think it will be a lot clearer then how then to behave and how then to mitigate some of these things.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I think highlighting some really critical aspects, not only education, but also raising awareness on some of this. You got me thinking on the issue of children and how they play with their devices and so forth. That a lot of us do not necessarily have that oversight and a deeper picture. Probably workshop for parents would be interesting, to drive awareness in that regard. We hear this term within the sector, which the information security space is somehow sector has coined, the dark patterns. Dark patterns essentially is strategies that are used basically also to make users subscribe to stuff that they never really intended to, trick them into areas that they've never really intended to, but ending up finding out that they're married and stuff like that without even knowing that that is the case. How can we basically address some of these challenges? Let me start with you, my brother.
I think let me give firstly everybody what the dark patterns might be. Who uses Instagram? Have you ever been on your computer and you get a little pop-up saying, we want to personalize your experience for you, click accept? Who actually reads what those say? Nobody does. You just click on it and you say accept and move on. But what you don't realize is that those are the dark patterns, because you've just accepted to them, going through your own history, going through your browser, going through your own mic, so that if I'm speaking to you now and I say, man, I'm creating some dumplings, eh? And then when you go and Google something, all of a sudden KFC is running a special on dumplings. How did they find that out? Because you gave them the approval to do that. And those are the dark patterns that people should really start to notice about. Is that when we give you an end user license agreement, you download a software, it says read this 3,000 page thing, and at the bottom you're going to sign an oath of blood and it's just nobody reads, you just click accept. So these things, people should be made aware of them so that they don't happen as often as they are supposed to happen. And our privacy is the most important thing. So if privacy is taken away from you, that means I have access to all your information. What can I do? How many of us have you went somewhere and started searching your pockets and you didn't find your phone? And then all of a sudden your heart is now in your throat. It's because all of our information and all of our data is sitting in these technological things that is very private to us. And if someone gets access to this, then I can technically be you. Then I can take over your own life. Because your banking app, your whatever documents, your CVs, everything is there. So these dark patterns are what we need to actually educate people about. To say, look guys, be careful of what you're doing online. Be careful of what you're signing up for. Actually read terms and conditions very well.
Awesome. Yeah.
So unfortunately in South Africa there is a dark pattern which is contributing towards, like you said, people getting access to banking apps. And so I'm just going to drop an idea that somebody could potentially use for the hackathon or possibly in the future. So the rate of kidnapping in South Africa is growing exponentially, and one of the reasons for that is that people are trying to get access to banking apps which live on the phone. So the idea, and I haven't done much work into this, is a cloaking app where your banking apps can sit behind a cloaking app and essentially be disguised on your phone. And that can possibly be linked with geodata, so that if you're in a location that you not normally go to, it can alert your bank and possibly other security providers.
Fantastic. Cool. I mean, this is really, really fascinating, and some ideas that I hope you're writing. And I saw that on the screen. We've got also people joining us online. I can see people there in the auditorium. Welcome. We are with you. Please keep engaging. We'll also have an opportunity to ask questions. Please, if some questions pop up, write them down. You'll get a chance to ask them. So, of course, we talk about entrepreneurship, and we're in an entrepreneurship hub. You know, we're driving and building companies. I made reference of Snowed as a great company that also was established here. So we talk about also, security by design. Are entrepreneurs in our incubators, accelerators, our venture studios really taking security seriously? What's actually happening currently? Sina, let me maybe invite you.
So this is a global challenge, especially if we had to focus it in Africa. There's an article by ITWeb that 90% of African companies actually are not using cybersecurity, they're not using cybersecurity, and especially in South Africa. And if you can look at today's business landmark, it's really important for a startup to have security, to prioritize it actually. And even if they can achieve at least a security, an industry recognized certification, that actually gives them the leverage, to have that competitive advantage. And also, you can even build trust with your customers as well as with your investors, and that will also limit or reduce your risks in your data being breached. So we're not seeing a lot of our startups investing in that. Probably could be the cost of putting those securities in measures, but I think also the education is not there.
Yes, let's get Mr. Jump to just give us his presentation.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think you're being very generous. Because in the reality, nobody sets out to build a secure application. They set out to build an application.
Yeah.
And part of the message we need to bring into this is you do not add security at the end. We've tried. We are living in a world where security is an afterthought. The firewall, the anti-malware on the endpoint. We had that because the systems were never designed to be secure. They were just designed to work. Knowing that, we have absolutely no excuse in designing something new that security is not inherent to our design. Do not assume someone else is going to secure it for you. Hint, they're not. You're going to get the blame. So, make sure you get the blame for being a hero, not for being the guy who caused the biggest disaster in the world. Okay? I already have that trophy, I'm not handing it back. We'll talk about that later. But design it, insist. And if you're a developer, okay, design costs money.
Yeah.
Good design costs more money. Okay? Secure design should not be an afterthought. So explain to your customer, I'm doing this for you. My code is going to have your brand on it. Wouldn't you like to be the hero too? Security now, not security later. Because I can guarantee your customer is not going to be happy when they end up in court, because their application allowed all of their customers' bank accounts to be stolen because they asked the designer not to include identity validation. Yeah. Don't be that witness in court.
Also, just on this point, I mean, as a person, Mr. Singh, who's worked with a venture capital fund, and also worked in the financial space, what is the cost of not having secure solutions?
So I think it depends on the type of startup that you're building. For some startups, it might be much more costly than others. So for example, for a fintech startup, it's very important to build trust with your users. And from the outset, if you don't build in security measures, you're basically dead in the water. Whereas if you have maybe starting off a media company with newsletters, for example, it might be less important. But as my colleagues were saying, I think cost is a big factor, especially in Africa, where startup funding is more difficult to come by. These solutions cost money. I think it's important in that case to, if you're building a startup and using other pieces of software to string together for your MVP, for example, make sure that those third-party providers have solid security in place if you cannot afford it at the outset. But in time, I think it's important to factor that in. And like we were saying in other lectures that were given today, cybersecurity is not a product, it's a process, it's a culture, it's by design, and it's important that we incorporate that into our startups.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for those points. I hope you're taking notes, and remember our hashtags. Do hashtag inform the world that we're doing amazing things over this period, and that this journey will also continue into June. We'll be doing some amazing things also in June. I think want to just tell them that you're doing amazing things. So we're together on the eve of Mother's Day. Tell them. Okay. Awesome stuff. Let's talk the public sector. What's happening in the public sector in terms of cybersecurity? I know we talked about CETA, and you've also indicated that you've worked at CETA at some point. Are we doing the right things?
Can I please be excused? Mentioning CETA. I think the biggest challenge that I am beginning to identify being in this space, I think one of the things that Ridwan, one of the previous speakers, mentioned was that data is the new oil, right? We all know that oil is a commodity. Once you've got a commodity, what do? You're supposed to look after it. You're supposed to take certain measures that you ensure that you treat it in the right way. We are not in a position to identify and point out what the commodity is. We've got pieces of data sets lying around in government, but I don't recall us having a sit down and say, let us classify our data. Let us pinpoint what this is and what the value is. Let us pinpoint what this, we've got even your simplest legislation, POPIA, right? When someone gets appointed into the public service, right? Now you've got all those pieces of data that pertain to citizens, individuals. You ought to know how to handle that, right? How often do we then say, as an entrant into the public service, this is how you're going to handle this data, because this is what this data means, this is what this data means. I always have a tiff. When I look at cabinet members of cabinet, people who have stolen all they've got. Secrets of the country. They're playing on WhatsApp. They're sharing confidential data on WhatsApp, left, right, and center. And I ask myself, we are preaching security to the lowest people, us there at the bottom, but you here on top, you've got these WhatsApp groups. WhatsApp was not designed to secure our data. It's not for us, it's not for that. It's actually not supposed to be a platform where government actually plays in. If it were for me, we would be having our own separate platform as government, and you say, here's a device that is actually, that meets the criteria of the standards that any transaction, any communication must happen here. It's the same with Gmail. Go and check how many government officials have got Gmail accounts, right? Because I can't access my, they call it Outlook. So if I can't access my Outlook, I send it to my Gmail, you know, because I can access it easier and quicker. And again, what is Gmail? Is that not a public cloud?
Sure.
What's the golden rule in South Africa? Everything that ought to be on the cloud that belongs to the state needs to be local, right? And you need to have control over that particular host, you know. So who has control over Gmail? You know? So those are some of the concerns again that I look at and say, the lack of awareness in the things that we do pertaining to the data, the severity, and the classification of what we are busy working on and what we have at our disposal. I don't think we are aware. So there is a huge lack of awareness to start with. Yeah, I can.
Super. Thank you very much for that. I hope you're getting some really good nuggets, some ideas of what to work on, solutions for the public sector. Mr. Sia, as a a management consultant, I don't know if you do work with the public sector, and what has been your observation in this regard?
I think let me take you all back around 2 years ago, 2021. Who knows what happened to Transnet? That's a perfect example of how the government actually takes security as an afterthought.
Yeah.
So the problem with government is one, they're more focused on delivery. So if there's something that needs to be implemented, it needs to be done and done now, just so it could help the community, could help society or whatever. But nobody ever thinks about the security aspect of it. And one of the problems that I picked up very early on is our own education system. Our own education system, especially when it comes to IT professionals, when you go to school, the only thing you're taught is dev. No one is taught security.
Yeah.
So when the government comes and recruits all these beautiful people here and says, guys, we want this solution to do this, not even one of them is thinking about security. They just want to implement this, get it out there, and let the people use it. Okay, let me not implicate myself, but has anybody ever went on a government website and mistakenly put a semicolon on any input field?
Yes, fine.
Just, yeah, you'll definitely start to see that conjugated off. There's something off here. So that's why I say that security has been treated as an afterthought and not something that should be done from the start. And that's the government sentiment from my side.
What's up?
Calling to off. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. I know most of you have sat in panels, right, for hackathons, for a number of really awesome events that happen in the ecosystem. How does one actually win a hackathon? Does one necessarily need to? How do you win? How do you leverage it to your benefit? But people here, look at this group of amazing, future makers. They're also just trying to figure out how do we actually, make it in the hackathon space. Sina.
So I actually love hackathon platforms because this is where now you can learn and acquire new skills, right? But then one thing that we've realized and we've picked up along the years is that there isn't a lot of preparation and focus when it comes to participants. It's very important that, especially now that you are already preparing prior to the hackathon that is coming, it's very important to put your team together, start research, and come up with ideas that would be relevant to the society. And solutions that Muse has already mentioned a couple of challenges that they have in the government sector. So when you have a team, start having responsibilities that there has to be a research that needs to be done. Focus on the environment, what is happening, what is the theme as well is very important. Does everyone in the team understand what is expected, what are the deliverables, right, that needs to be delivered at the end of the hackathon. And start now putting, testing things and, working towards the hackathon. Already, there might have been challenges from sectors that are out there on the website or ideas, but then do they relate to societal challenges? How do you also leverage on that? But then it's also important to use a hackathon ideation as an idea to start a business. When you're starting a business, there's always a problem that you're solving, right? Focus on that problem, identify it, and work on the solution. Once you have worked on the solution, it's very easy now to look at who are the competitors in the solution that you are actually working on. Look at what is it that they are doing, what is missing within those competitors, right? And also, market is very important. No matter where your idea is there a market for what you are building? Once you can identify your market, it's easy to know whether, do we still continue with this or we do not continue? And this brings up to the point why most hackathon ideas do not go further, because of the little things that are being missed, like identifying your market and also a business model. As a team, work on the business model. Want to also understand the importance of business model. Can we make money out of this? And is it viable? Now is the time for actually to start making that research towards your hackathon. Lastly, the presentation, how you deliver, how you sell yourself. The pitch, it's a competition, but then this is where you sell yourself, because you don't know who's sitting in the room. Someone might be interested in your idea. As a team, work on the presentation. It needs to speak to your judges, it needs to speak to whoever is in the room, an investor. So when you are working on your presentation, it is not only because it's a hackathon. Pitch it as a business pitch.
Awesome. Can I get a judge's perspective?
Yes.
Okay. So I think from my end, Sina has mentioned that you need to identify a challenge that you are going to be solving, right? Obviously, you'll have your judging criteria. And I always say to the teams, get a chatbot, write out the judging criteria, all the aspects. If you are going to be judged on 5 elements, write them down, right? Then you take your challenge, you put it here, and you start looking for a solution now, right? Be user-centric when you are trying to solve that challenge. Who are you solving it for? It's not a nice to have, right? So if you are saying to me, you are building an application that solves long queues, you must understand what I go through as a citizen, as a potential end user, right? Now, there's always 2 folds, right? There's always going to be the outside, and then there's also going to be the inside, right? So I'll give you an example with an online recruitment platform. The outside will be the person who is actually applying for the job, right? So we are making it easy for this person not to take a taxi to go to a place to drop the CV. So we are making it simple for them to, at the comfort of their zone, upload their stuff, do this, do that, do that, do that. Now at the back now, that's where you get your HR officials. That is who you're going to be selling this to. Demonstrate the value add to the person you are selling it to. Now, if tomorrow, say CPSI advertises a post of, we're looking for a driver who is 30 years of age, how many CVs do you think we're going to get? You've heard of stories where people turned up in their thousands and they were only looking for 2 people, right? So now, demonstrate value add to the customer now to say, this is actually intended for you. So instead of you filtering through 4,000 CVs, this application will actually pre-filter for you. So I will click a button here and I will take out all those that actually don't have more than 5 years of driving experience based on whatever you would have built into the application. So now, as you are building that application, right? So now you've demonstrated the value add, but then go back to the chart and say, what do the judges want to see, right? And I always say to teams, you're not all going to be technical. Have a business analyst in your team. Someone who's always going to keep you in check, because I know you'll get carried away and you start building and you start building. And as a result, we always hear people, when you start your presentation, you start off as you are solving a queue management. Then the next thing someone is talking about an ambulance. Then the next thing, then there is a mortuary, then there's a drone, and I'm like, oh. But what is it that we are solving? So the business analyst that you're going to have in your team will always keep you in check to say, guys, that is what we are trying to address. You know, let us stick to that. Let us ensure that we want to win the competition. There's the criteria. We want to sell to business. This is what business is looking for. You know, and even if that thing exists in the market, find your niche. Have your innovation there that will make you stand out. To say, of all the online recruitment platforms that exist in the world, ours is unique because at the back, it will query Home Affairs and check if the ID number that was entered here is going to be verified before you picking the phone up, and we'll have an API integrated. If I am going to integrate with all the universities in the country, and you claim to me that you studied at VES for 3 years, I don't want to get a call from the NPA to say, actually, Mr. Mkelu doesn't have an honors degree. How did I miss that? I would have actually integrated, because that's the niche now that I'm bringing into this online recruitment, that I'm going to ping all the institutions in South Africa and ask, do you have an ID number that belongs to Mr. Mkelu? What actually courses or what actually did he study with you? Sure.
Awesome. Awesome. We've run a little bit out of time, but I hope the nuggets shared by our panel has been really insightful. I'm going to give them an opportunity to give their closing remarks quickly. And Sia, I'd like you just maybe, I'm going to direct yours a little bit to the tools that you can recommend for, you know, the cybersecurity tools or platforms that you can recommend for the teams that will be building solutions, maybe to take into consideration. Also, I think when this hackathon was established in 2017, one of the things that was a resolution was to build, you know, an army of capable, you know, young people who will actually go into the sector and really help to mainstream some of the things that we're talking about. Just, you can also maybe just comment quickly on what is happening in the space to ensure that we can mainstream this.
So some of the resources that you people could actively use to actually help you in building your solutions there, which one thing that I love about our modern world is everything is free. So if you go to, there's a website called Hack the Box. This will give you all the top information that you need about what's currently going on in cybersecurity, how to actually hack things, how do these hacks work. I remember they spoke about your solution should implement something about the OWASP Top 10. Does anybody actually know what the OWASP Top 10 is? So what the OWASP Top 10 is, it's a list of the most common vulnerabilities that you'll find in applications today. So if you don't understand what they're saying there, Hack the Box will definitely be there for you. It'll help you out a lot. There's also other platforms such as Try Hack Me. You'll be able to go there. They'll teach you everything that you need to know, just to find out the basics of cybersecurity, what happens in basic attacks. And those are just the basic tools that even I use, and I still use to this day actually, just to sort of learn, and then you can take it from there and implement it into your own solution.
Awesome. Mr. C, maybe you can also just talk a little bit to how do we ensure that post the hackathon, that people actually build solutions and build startups out of what they're working on.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so I think post the hackathon, it's important to to have conviction on your idea and not let it fall apart. So in saying that, you obviously need resources, so try to secure funding and mentorship from the right people in order to sustain positive momentum and to test your idea. So I think you need to give it a fair shot. In a hackathon type environment, you might not have sufficient time to properly test out a solution. So it's important that you test your hypotheses post the hackathon and determine if it's viable or not. So during the hackathon, you can actually start some of the testing as well. I think 4 keys are important during the hackathon, and some of my colleagues have touched on these points. So team, timing. Your time is under pressure during the hackathon, but you also need to make sure that the market has the right set of trends and timing for your product. Traction, so you need to test your product in some way or some form, even if it's just speaking to people if you're running out of time during the hackathon. And then of course your thesis, your business model needs to be on point, and you need to also have a fair handle on the competitive environment as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Super Sina as well.
Focus, research, prepare, test before. That's it.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome, Mr. Booth.
Yeah, so mine is short. Use the mentors that are going to be at your disposal. Feel free to ask questions. And work to each other's strengths, guys.
Yeah.
Right? You all know what you are capable of. Work to each other's strengths, and
Awesome. Let the jump. You begin it and you close it.
I'm going to struggle to get that quick. Thank you, Sina. Seriously, when you are coming up with your hackathon theme, study it, understand it, research it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, how fantastic the lessons you've learned, the new code tricks. You have this thing called a pitch. A pitch is when you grab something and you throw it over. You're throwing it at the judges. In that pitch, you have a very limited time to convince them that you have done the research, you have done the work, you've done the testing, you've got the marketing plan, you've got the model, and you've got the presentation. You don't get a second chance. Now, the winner is going to be the team that best presents all of that. And as we've heard, it doesn't need to be finished, but you have to know what finished looks like and explain to the judges that you've done enough work to actually get there. Why is that important? And why do I love it? I love the mentoring and the coaching. The judging is hard work. Hint, judges, if you haven't spoken to the teams before you see them, you won't get the truth. Right? Teams, work on planting the truth into your pitches. It works in your favor. And the reality of that is, your pitch in a hackathon is your entrepreneurial start. Every business engagement, every time you go for funding or advanced training, you're going to have to sell you as being the right person for it. So learn to embrace it. It's scary. It should be scary. It's never going to get easier, by the way. But once you appreciate that you have to convince people that you can do it, then we have investors, then we have developers, then we have more opportunities. And you'll end up employing half a dozen people who have tried to pitch you that they know what they're doing. And that's how it works. So your pitch is way more important than you may have thought. So no pressure. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's give a round of applause to our wonderful panel. Our thought and practice leaders. Thank you very much for your insights. Mr. T, I'm not sure if I can take 2 or 3 questions. Okay, I can see hands going up. Please do introduce yourself as well as... We've got questions online as well, so we'll take questions also online. Please do introduce yourself when you ask your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Solzak. So I'm a mobile developer. Right? So one thing I've noticed is that web apps are less secure compared to mobile and desktop, right? So I heard you talking about that mobile apps can be hacked as well. So I just wanted to understand what kind of hacks are they susceptible to.
Awesome.
So it's not quite less secure. In fact, they're pretty much the same. It all depends on how the developer actually made the application in question. So a web app could be more secure than a mobile app, or a mobile app could be more secure than a web app. But how did the developer implement their code, firstly? All the security features within it, how did they implement that? And that will determine how secure an application is. There are other attack vectors that only reside on mobile, that will not reside on something like your web app. For example, if you're going to be using your banking app, a mobile app would eventually store some of the logs on the phone itself. And if I were to be able to get into your phone, then I could read the logs and probably find your password, probably find your usernames or anything like that. So those are some of the vulnerabilities that are on mobile that will not be on a web app, even though there's certain things such as caching, which could leave some information. So it's quite similar, it just depends on how was the application implemented, and that's all it boils down to. So if you don't have secure coding from the start, then it is what it is.
Awesome, awesome.
All right, so there's one question online, Mr. Lucky,
Okay, super.
from Freddy Manyate. Says, why is that cybersecurity is idealized as an IT thing, as where it affects other sectors? Is it that we develop a system and application, so everything is solely dependent on the IT industry? For example, in engineering, they design a unique proprietary, they are mindful of the level of security measures that they are needed to secure their work.
Judges, I'm not sure if you got that. It was quite a mouthful, but I think you got it.
I've got this for that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I keep saying cybersecurity is too important to be left up to IT. And if you're in IT, you need to embrace that and explain it, because it's a business risk. It is also complicated, it uses technology. It's too easy for anyone who doesn't understand to say, oh, the IT guy will fix it. So I've been in the industry for a long time. The IT guy is busy. He's fixing everything. And you want him to do security? Come on. Somewhere along the line, business has got to pick up. It's actually my business, my problem, my risk. Let me fix it, not blame IT. So that question is perfectly valid. It appears that way, and as long as IT sits and says, I want it to be that way, we're creating work for ourselves, but we're not actually fixing anything. Okay, the dark side says there's a career opportunity for that, but I would like the career opportunity to be for smart people, not just all the hard work. Cybersecurity is a business problem.
Yeah.
Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's, I see there's a lady, there's a hand, thank you very much. Yes.
Greetings to everybody. I go by the name of Lishali Romatavo, and what I want to find out is, can I make money from just coming up with an idea that is solving the security issue, and then not programming? This programming language, you know, like if yes, then how?
Okay. Fantastic. I see that Mr. Singh.
Take it for us.
You know, they say that ideas are generally worthless. So you shouldn't, in most cases, protect your ideas too closely.
Yeah.
It's important to share those ideas with people that can help at least build an MVP from that idea, so that you can get it out there, possibly test it. And then as you start going through that process, it becomes more and more valuable. As you start developing the team, writing some code, doing some tests, becoming more knowledgeable about the market, speaking to industry experts, and then you start developing some sort of IP. And in tech, you know, intellectual property has value. And so it's possible to then monetize your idea, to go out there and get some funding, possibly sell it, although that can be more difficult in the early stages. But it's important to get your idea out there, put it in the wild, and see what happens. It's an exciting journey, so please go ahead and implement your idea and then try to monetize it.
Awesome. Mr. Jump, I saw that. Okay.
And we use hackathons to refine ideas. This is where it starts. So don't be afraid to be ambitious, to visualize. So I would say, go in there and just come up with anything. You never know where it will take you. What matters is the commitment of, after the hackathons, what happens. Because that's where now most of the energy dies down. And that's where most developers or hackathon participants don't know where to go. And there is actually platforms, there are accelerators. Like where I am at MLab, we deal with early stage startups. So you can have an idea, you can register and be part of some of our programs. We are able to help you. Our mandate is to de-risk you to get other opportunities, meaning that we get you from ideation to a point where you are able to apply for further funding to get your MVP tested, and there's a lot of grants, there's a lot of opportunities, and Africa has a lot of investors that are ready for you to support unicorn companies. So we should not be afraid.
Yeah, awesome. You thoughts?
My summary on that was much less brutal. Ideas do have value. So the answer to your first question was yes, but not if you keep the idea in your head.
Yeah.
Share it, learn from it, grow it.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
Great, so thank you very much. We've got one last question. This is our last question. The T is very strict on this one. Please, sir.
I just wanna add on I wanna ask about when you were talking about the difference between the web application and the mobile application, like them being equally vulnerable, since you said with the mobile application somebody could actually get your log and see the details that are stored by your mobile application. So I thought about same thing can actually happen with web application, whereby you could actually connect to a public Wi-Fi where somebody is currently downloading your cookies, and they could also decrypt it and get your details. So yeah, I wanted some clarification.
So fortunately enough, there were people before us who thought of that, and that's where SSL comes in. So that all the information that you're going to be transporting over the wire is actually encrypted. That's why they tell you if you're going to go on a website, look for that lock, the little lock. Website must be HTTPS.
Yeah.
That's to avoid exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay, so us as developers, basically when we develop it, we gotta be smart enough to a point whereby we could change the token every single time the user has to access the site, that it changes the token so it doesn't remain the same, so that if I could download your cookies, I would probably have a different cookie compared to what you got. So basically you should always get a different token.
I'm going to give you a cybersecurity paradigm. It's called the CIA triad, right? So it's confidentiality, integrity, availability. I'm sure most of you have heard all about this, right? So if you're going to move more towards confidentiality, then you're taking away from availability and the other ones. So if you're going to implement that into your application, is that really going to make my life easier as a user or just more difficult? Now I'm going to have to re-authenticate every time, or if you're doing it in the back end, sure. And I don't have to see that, that is perfectly fine. But then what practical use is that? If you already implemented security from the start, which is secure by design, then you wouldn't have to keep changing the cookie. Because then, how are you going to keep track of the session if you keep changing my cookie?
Cool. Thank you very much.
Once again, round of applause to our panel. Thank you very much. Thank you for this session and for your engagement. I know it was a long session, but I hope some really good insights were shared with you and they'll help you as you develop your solutions. Thank you also to the people who are joining us online. We love you and we wish you were here. And we really are enjoying basically being part of this amazing engagement. Karabo, over to you.
That's me. I had to quit my government job, It's actually very lucrative, but that lucrative comes from how well you present your solution. So what we tend to look for is how scalable is it? It doesn't make sense for you to build something that can make you so much money, but you do not intend it for the intended audience. There's this saying that I'm not the target audience. Well, it does work, especially in hackathons. As a user for that solution, I need to make sure that it works for me, it's intended for me, and it's actually scalable, it can make me money, and it can actually help people. And what else did I forget? Sure. Oh, by the way, this is Tomato, guys. I met him about 7 years ago in a hackathon, and he's one of the biggest, brightest brains that you can have.
I'm a glorified prompt engineer for ChatGPT. I'm a software developer. Backend, I do everything: apps, mobile apps, desktop apps, web, backend. So one of the key things that I won quite a number. I think did I win this hackathon?
You've won all of them, so you're not allowed to enter.
Yes. Okay. So I usually work alone because I don't want my ideas to be tainted. Yes. So how I would process my information is look at the room you're in whenever you're ideating something, and look at the common problems that people have. For example, we have these machine learning, smart endpoint protection products and all of those protecting enterprise. But I can tell you one thing, it's still easy to hack into enterprise because of the people element within a business. And that's what most companies don't really tell you. How would you hack into a person? So now I'm ideating an idea. So now I have my first vectors. Okay, now the company doesn't know what they like. Yeah, companies do ask what do their employees like doing. So now here's a possible solution for the hackathon. Okay, I CEO of a fictitious company, let's call it Pinky and the Brain. Yes. I load your profiles and they're all there. And now I'm going to hire people outside of the company to actually now try to attack you guys using the vectors that I've provided for them. People leave a lot of train behind, and technology is there to accelerate you getting hacked. So know your stack, know the backend framework you're using. Laravel, I love it because most of the security problems have been addressed there. Your CSRF, somebody was talking about cookies. I mean, if I steal a cookie, I can do a CSRF attack on your app, and then boom, I have your session on my browser.
My name is Ayaz. I'm the CTO at Telspace Africa. We are Hackers for Hire. So we do offensive security, that's penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, array teaming, to name a few. And I'll just go over some of these concepts, the methodology approach behind all of this testing. All right, so agenda for today, like I've mentioned, we'll just cover threat landscape, threat actors, what are threats, different approaches to testing. I'll touch on array teaming versus penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, etc., and so forth. Okay, like I mentioned, we are Hackers for Hire. So what or who is a hacker? Any answers? All right, so hacker is basically anyone, any person. Okay, yeah.
It also wants an ethical hacker, right?
No, just a hacker.
The hacker.
We'll touch on ethical.
Someone that finds faults in security systems.
Okay.
No, not ethical hacker, it's also just hacker.
Yeah, just hacking in general.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
at a very simple level, you're looking for flaws, vulnerabilities, faults to exploit them.
yeah, but it's essentially it doesn't have to be technical, right? Or looking for vulnerabilities. It's just trying to find different ways to do something. That's essentially hack. So yeah, just coming up with a creative way to do something, like a simple way to do something. And a difference between hacker, attacker or criminal, because we do get that asked a lot as well. Like, you guys are hackers, aren't you like criminals or doing illegal stuff? But that's not the case. So criminal is basically someone that carries out these activities, but in illegal way, right? Now, going back to, like you mentioned, ethical hacker. Ethical hacker is basically a hacker, well, looking into the technology space, the cybersecurity space. Ethical hacker is someone who has permission to do the hacking, doing the testing itself, from the owner of the target system, application, building, company, whatever it is that you're targeting. And there is obviously approach that you have to follow, methodologies, and criminals also use this. It's basically starting with the information gathering. That's the most important part of any security assessment, and this is where you would spend most of your time trying to gather information about the target, what is it that you're targeting, what are the different ways, how it works, internal workings of the system, application, whatever it is that you need to test. Then you move on to threat modeling. This can be technical as well as like on a high level from a business perspective, to identify what the critical application or system or aspect to the target is. Try and identify what the threats or threat actors are for those that affect those systems. And then try and come up with an attack path to try and achieve the end goal. What are you trying to assess the security, trying to get access to the system, information, etc., whatever it is, that would be the end goal of that exercise. And once you have the attack path, you would end the scope the targeted systems, you would then move on to vulnerability analysis. This is basically, it can be either active or passive, and active is where you're directly engaging with the target systems to find the weaknesses in those systems or application, etc. Once you have identified this, you would try and exploit those weaknesses. And once you have done the exploit, you've got the initial foothold, you have access to that system, what are the post-exploitation goal of it? Are you going after the data? Are you trying to bring down that system? Whatever it is. And at the end, reporting. Most of the analysts don't like reporting. It's fun to do just the breaking part of it, but not so much documenting the steps, what you have achieved. But it is important because this is what the company or the owner of those systems, of these systems, gets to help them firstly transfer the skills internally to try and assess and perform these sort of vulnerability assessment, exploitation, etc. Internally, but as well as understand the weaknesses in the system and how to remediate and fix those systems to try and make it better, more secure. Alright, so OSINT framework is very important when it comes to information gathering. You can just go to osintframework.com. There are different tools you can use. Most of them are online, others you can download and run locally on your computer and do scans or whatever it is that you need to get information for your target system. Then on the other screenshot is of operating system called Kali Linux. It comes pre-installed with all the tools that you need to perform, basically follow through all the different approaches, information gathering, vulnerability analysis, exploitation, etc. So it makes it easier for you or the person doing the test. But obviously, we do recommend that before using any of the tools, you need to first of all try and understand how these tools work, right? What is it that's happening behind the scene? Whenever you use something, always before you click or run something, you should know what will happen, what will I see, what is the outcome if I run this tool, right? Alright, so how difficult is it to find insecure IoT devices online? And I use the word insecure, I'll get to it in a minute. But yeah, IoT devices, guys know basically your light bulbs can be IoT, the webcams, etc. Right? So how difficult it is it to find these? Well, it's very easy actually. So there are different indexing tools or websites that have a database of these IoT devices online, and most of them you can use just by going through it. It's not commercial. You don't need any. Well, they are. So this is shodan.io. This one you can use. It's free to use, but there is some limitation. You have to get the license to obviously do the filtering, search, etc. The other one is Insecam. Also does similar stuff. So here basically once you go on the site, just filter through different devices. You can filter by countries like South Africa, what devices they are, what is it that you're able to see and access on the internet, right? Right, so getting back to the insecure IoT devices, Internet of Insecure Things. This basically happens when you just buy a new IoT device, put it on the network, and it just works, right? By magic. So these devices basically communicate to some system or server, and sites like Shodan, Insecam, etc. they index these devices. And because it's most of them plug and play, most of them the configuration of these are not changed, right? You're running it just by default, plugging it into the network. It has IP, internet connection, etc. That's what makes it insecure. That allows anyone on the internet to be able to directly access this, whether through like no authentication or like default password. It will have sometimes admin password, etc. Something like this. Right, reconnaissance. This is another tool, wiggle.net, because I'm not able to use my laptop here. But what we also do is just plug in, say, wireless Wi-Fi scanning device, where we try and get all the probes from devices. Most of people do leave their Wi-Fi open, and this basically sends out, if you have connect automatically for your SSIDs, whether at home or any other places you've visited, this will send out the probes, and we can see the SSID, MAC address, etc. And what wiggle.net does is, if you know about war driving, old days, well, true now also, but this basically just going and driving through places and scanning for the broadcasted SSIDs and to check whether or not it's public, like open for anyone to use without any passwords, or it is password protected, etc. And this is documented on this wiggle.net against the address itself. So you can search for specific SSID, MAC address, or by like looking at specific area, like in this new town, you can see which what are the SSIDs available that you can connect, etc. Another possible attack vector is through Bluetooth, something called Blueborn attack. This is where you infecting the Bluetooth devices, and vulnerable because infected devices then can be used to spread the infection, right, to different devices and so forth. Alright, so before moving on to threat modeling, I just want to touch on the difference between penetration testing and red teaming. So penetration testing, like I mentioned with ethical hacking, you need permission to test those, right? There is a scope involved, and penetration testing is basically tightly scoped testing, where you're just focusing on a specific application, a specific system to try and assess the security of it. Is it configured properly? Are there any vulnerabilities from development point of view, configuration point of view, etc. Whereas red teaming is, the scope is broad. You're not limited to just specific system or network. But say the company that you're targeting would be in scope. And generally you work towards a specific goal to try and access to certain business critical application or like customer data in insurance company or something like that, or just getting access to the domain controller on the network and owning the network, so forth. So pen testing, tightly scoped, you're just assessing certain applications or systems, whereas red teaming is you, besides the scope, you're also not limited to just using certain tools or performing certain type of attacks, right? There is social engineering also in play. You can do physical, where try and go physically to the building or the company to see whether or not you can bypass the physical access controls. The network security thereof as well. There's social engineering aspect to it, from like phishing, etc., spoofing email addresses, and so forth. All right, so threat modeling. This is, like I mentioned, can be technical as well as high-level exercise where you're engaging the business owners of the application, how they access the application, what are the flows when it comes to critical data, etc. You generally looking at whether or not something can be spoofed, tampered with, if there's a chance of a denial of service attack or affecting the availability of the system or the data that it holds. And this generally covers not just the technical, like I mentioned, but the people and process part of the system as well, the whole process from where the data is created, accessed by different applications, where it's stored, to backup, etc. And here's on the left is an example of such threat modeling, outcome of threat modeling, where you're looking at different actors or possible threat actors and access that can be exploited through certain attack paths to access that application, and what are different ways to obviously then bypass the checks or access that you already have in place. Threat landscape, you have your threats and threat actors. Unfortunately, they are always there. We cannot get rid of them. Here I've got some figures that's lost due to cybercrime, over 189 million rand due to cybercrime that were lost in money, as well as over 130,000 users were affected, right? But at the same time, 62% of statistics like that are made up, and this one also is made up, it's not an actual number. So what's the point behind this, right? We're looking at context. Context is important when you're assessing any, or when you're performing any assessment, to be exact. If I'm talking in technical term, a single vulnerability will have different risk rating to different businesses. It won't be same across businesses. Like looking at this image, storing watermelons on a higher place where the person is actually sleeping is higher, obviously has higher risk compared to like looking at the watermelons on the floor, etc. Right? So context is important when you're assessing any application, when you come with the methodology for assessing the people, process, and technology. All right, male or female, I will show the next slide and I'll ask whether you think it's male or female. Any takers? Female? Okay. Well, I was just questioning. Alright, so I have female. This is basically just the word liar. If you just slant at an angle and see, it's just the word liar, right? So that's the idea behind social engineering. You lying, you impersonating, you like spoofing emails, calls, etc. To try and achieve or get access to the information that you need to write during the assessment. And that's essentially what social engineering is. You impersonating, you lying about who you are and trying to get the target or victim to then give you the information or carry out certain actions. So from here, if I have to ask you out of these three channels, which one do you think is you would trust more? Speaking to or hearing your boss over the phone, or via email, or through an SMS? Over the phone? So that's true, because all of this can be spoofed, right? Yeah. So yeah, I've got some examples of tools that can be used to spoof calls, change the numbers that the person receiving the call will see, spoof card, spoof tail, etc. You can also add like background noises to it, like ambulance or something, to just to create that urgency. Also, when you carry out this social engineering attack over the phone. Then also I've got the different pictures of Barack Obama. That's to show deepfake as well, to show that the videos themselves can also, well, the speech of the video can also be altered. And we've done this also with our client engagements, where we just get recordings of certain high-profile, say CEO, CFO within the company, etc. And then create a video and just change the speech to make it say whatever we want, right? And this is possible through deepfake tools. And there's just examples, OpenShot, Audacity, Wave2Lip, etc. We've used this successfully, and this can obviously, these tools are also getting better and more efficient as well when it comes to spoofing. Alright, so getting back to threat actors, these are the four main categories of threat actors. On the left, we've got script kiddies. It's just a person who knows how to open command line and just run tools, right? They don't have the knowledge of how to use, what the tool actually does behind the scene, or how to use it effectively. Then you've got organized crimes. These are criminals, actually, like hackers that have 9-to-5 jobs, and they basically going through the whole process of information gathering on their targets. Famous examples, the call center people. They would try and target like elderly people and go after like bank details or credit card information, etc. Then you have your activists or hacker activists. These are individuals or groups that are motivated by certain cause. And then at the end, you've got your nation-sponsored or nation-state actors. These are basically, they have all the resources and all the tools in their hand. And if they want to target a specific individual or company, they would be able to then get the access or information, etc. That's like I mentioned, they have all the resources and tools. They can even do like, just if you say order the phone, mobile phone or laptop, new laptop, they can intercept the delivery, unpackage, implant like a hardware on it for you to get the access to the device, etc. See what you're doing, listening, and then repackage, and you receive the brand new device, but obviously with the hardware implant. Alright, so threat actors again, after the list of threat actors, and if I have to ask you which of these pose the highest risk to a company, right? That you need to assess or targeting. Which one of these would that be? Internal employees, okay, and that's correct because they have the insider knowledge on the organization, the application, information, the process, etc. And they can be disgruntled or negligent, just malicious employees carrying out malicious actions, or just by a mistake. They can make a mistake and email a list of clients to not intended person, for example. So yes, and having the knowledge of the insider, having the insider knowledge, as well as then all these tools that are easily available to use, it can obviously it does pose higher risk to the company. And I've got a screenshot of a tool called SET. social engineer toolkit. It's a nice interactive command tool that you can use to generate your phishing payloads, different malicious payloads as well that you can just then execute over your network with the internal credentials that you have, right? The internal access that you have. There are also Armitage. Back in the day, it was with Kali Linux. This is basically just a nice user interface of Metasploit framework. It has all the exploits you can use, and it's free to use. You can just provide the system, target system or network, and then just point this tool to it. It'll basically carry out all the attacks possible, right? There's also the commercially available Cobalt Strike tool as well. So essentially, the point here is there are tools available, but it's important to understand how these tools work. What are they doing behind the scene? Because you want to be not a script kiddie, but a knowledgeable person or hacker when assessing these systems, and try and not affect any of the CIA, like that was mentioned before, confidentiality, integrity, or the availability of these systems that you are assessing, right? Another example of hardware tools by a company called Hack5. You can carry out your person in the middle attacks through LAN cables, in between your keyboard and your machine. Also for your screens that will remotely display what you're seeing on the screen as well as different Wi-Fi or wireless hacking tools. There are also other attack vectors or attack vectors that can be used by the attackers or criminals. And traditionally, when the application owners or the developers, they just focus on certain part of the application, like the input box that was mentioned earlier as well, where you're looking at carrying out SQL injection attacks or cross-site scripting attacks, etc. But these are obviously the multimedia tools, and there's also a tech on there where you can upload malicious subtitles for different movies or program, whatever it is that you need to get subtitles for. And they have specifically crafted input in them where, when processed by these, the vulnerable version of these applications, it can allow remote code execution to the victim's computer as that victim, and if it's a personal computer, obviously as an admin user. And then attackers have access to your computer and network. Another attack vector is an attack called Dolphin. This is when using Siri on iPhone or Google Assistant, for example. These applications are developed to listen on lower frequency than what the human ear can hear. And the attackers then obviously craft these low frequency attack paths or attacks on these devices and try and get access to mobile phones. Another example back in the day is called man in the disk attack. It was for the older version of Android devices where the updates were carried out using the external storage, your memory card, and anyone can, like attacker has access to this phone, right, or can give you a memory card with an update that's tampered with, then the application would then install that update and the attacker has access. But nowadays, obviously, other devices also, like the multimedia on the cars, for example, other routers, they also use the memory card to do a firmware upgrade, etc. So that's another possible attack vector. Another possible attack vector is when using fax, and some companies still do use fax. But because with the modern devices or printer fax machines, you can plug them on the network, and the attackers have done like a specially crafted input to this special characters. Basically, when processed by this fax machine, it allows them access to the device and then further infect the network that it's connected to. Alright, so I've touched on pen testing versus red teaming. I want to talk about pen testing versus vulnerability assessment, right? So if you just look at this house here, it has those windows, etc. Can you tell me what are the possible entry points or weaknesses? Sorry? You're just looking at the house. Windows, door, chimney. Yeah, so these are all the possible entry points right into the house, and that's essentially what a vulnerability assessment is, or vulnerability scanning tool does. It's looking at a system and just based on the type of system, version, software install, etc. It will query the database of vulnerabilities and then give you the results. And sometimes this can be false positive. Like if we've identified chimney, right? If you try and access the house through chimney, maybe there's blocked by concrete, or there's burglar on the windows, or there's alarm when you open the door, etc. So that's pen testing. That's now actively trying to assess the security of these weaknesses to iron out the false positive, right? Like I mentioned, the chimney can be blocked by a concrete ceiling, for example. So that's pen testing. Looking at the vulnerability result, vulnerability scanning tools will give you false positive, but exploiting or penetration testing is then further assessing using the automated tool as well as manual techniques to assess the true and try and get the true vulnerabilities or findings against these systems. Another example here is of a fighter plane used during the war, and all the red dots are basically the bullet holes when it comes back to the base. And just looking at this, can you tell me what areas you'd focus on in securing and further making this plane like secure or not vulnerable to these attacks? Yes? Okay, you focus on the points where there are no bullet holes. Okay. All right. So yeah, look. First of all, the plane came back, right? So it survived the attack. And looking at the bullet holes as well, like you mentioned, you look at the point where there are no bullet holes, but those are already secure. Those weren't affected, so to say. So this is essentially, yes?
I think the bullets in the middle, you try to close them out because there's people in there.
Okay, so cockpit.
Yeah, the cockpit.
Yeah, so you look at what the most critical part of the plane is, right, for it to function. Like with one wing, maybe it can make it through, don't know, but cockpit, engine, etc. You try and secure that first. So same thing when it comes to patching the vulnerabilities. Once you have the results of vulnerability scanning or pen testing results, you look at what are the business critical systems, what are the systems that's exposed, that are getting, say, more traffic, and you try and prioritize your patching based on that. All right, now going back to talking about the standards, we have the whole process and policies, plan, etc. With these standards, like if you're processing payment card, you probably use the PCI framework to implement the policy and standards and further enhance the security, right? There's also ISO 27001 that talks about different domains to enhance the security. And the image with all the colors, green, red, etc. That's sort of a dashboard or checklist dashboard to say for each of these standards in different domains, have you implemented this, have you not implemented it, etc. And unfortunately, a lot of the companies use this as a silver bullet to protect themselves against cyber attack, right? Once they see, okay, they've achieved all greens in the standard on specific framework they've used, they say they are secure, right? But then they get hacked, and they think, why? All right. So I'm not saying that standards are bad. You do need them to basically have a plan, a specific structure around how to implement security, what to implement, what to address first, etc. I'm also not saying technology is bad, or not saying that all people are bad. So what is bad then?
What's up?
Sorry?
What's that?
What's
that?
WhatsApp. Yes. So here essentially not knowing where to start, not integrating the whole people, process, technology part of it, not integrating the standards and implementing the technical controls to enforce the policy, enforce the standards, right? Let's speak about different domains, how to protect, etc. Not educating people around cyber hygiene, awareness around cyber security, etc. So that's essentially the problem. Here I've got free useful resources that can be used, and please do take note of these because it will be helpful for you for the Hackathon CTF. The OWASP Top 10 was mentioned earlier. It talks about different web application risk, API risk, mobile application risk, etc. And you can just focus on web application risk for the CTF. There is also the CVA.MITRE. This is basically a database of all the published vulnerabilities against different devices, softwares, technology, etc. By researchers and so forth. There's also the NIST vulnerability database that you can use. Then there's OpenVerse or Green Goals. This is vulnerability free or open source vulnerability scanning tool. Green Goals is user interface for OpenVerse. And it's helpful to basically get those the results of vulnerability and try and identify what technology that you're working with, right? There's W3AF. This is also another vulnerability scanning framework, but specifically for the web applications. And then there's Burp Suite as well, very useful. The community edition is free. It's basically essentially a proxy where you can see all the traffic that flows between your browser, well, the client, and the server that you're targeting. Then the free useful resources when it comes to all the exploits is Metasploit, like I mentioned before. It has by Rapid 7, it has all the exploits against most of the published CVEs that you can then use to gain access to the target system. Just a warning though, like I mentioned before, it is important to understand what these exploit or tool does behind the scene. Always think before you run the tool, what is it that you're expecting to happen, what is the outcome, what is it that you want to see happen, right? And like I mentioned, don't be a script kiddie, don't just run tools. There is chance, like on assessment, you can bring down the system. And sometimes you assessing the systems that are on production, that are live system. And even by a minute, if the system is down, it can have like a great loss to the business in terms of money and reputation, etc. Alright, so once you've done the exploit, you've gotten access to the system, network, building, or whatever it is that you're targeting. Post-exploitation, then you're working towards the goal. Now this is going back to the threat modeling again. What is the end goal, the objective of this exercise? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Is it the customer data, access to like business critical information, source code of the application, etc. Right? So are we all doomed, having talked about all the different threats, threat actors, attack vectors, etc.? No, right? Because we have information security. Why is it cyber security? What is the difference? So information security is actually a broad term that covers cyber security as well, but it's essentially protecting the confidentiality, integrity and availability of the information in any form, right? It can be in the digital space, cyberspace. It can be archive, your physical archives, information on paper, etc. And again, I don't want to talk more about information security, everyone has talked about it, but essentially from the creation of that information, do the deletion or backup of the information. You're looking at what are different ways you can, there are to secure this information. Other useful websites, besides the one I've already mentioned, there's privacy.net analyzer. This is basically assessing your web browser, web traffic, the local web traffic, what sites you've visited, what are the cookies or your public basically identifier for your web browser over the internet, where attackers can use this like specific version of the web browser running different web plugins, etc., and try and attack the machine that the web browser is running from. There's grc.com. There are different services for assessing your perimeter network security devices like your firewall, etc. There's one for checking how secure your password is. Obviously, don't input your real password in there to check how long it's going to take to crack or how long it is, how secure it is, etc. And just in terms of security, the longer the password is, we do know people talk about using mixed characters, uppercase, lowercase numbers, special characters, etc. But essentially, it's to make it as long as possible, right? And that's what increases the time it will take to compromise the password, either through online brute force or cracking offline. The scan.io you can use to check if you've got specific URL or link, you're not sure if it's safe or malicious. You can use a site to check. Obviously, if it is known to be malicious, then it will be flagged. If it's something, a new URL that is malicious, that won't help. This virus total does the same thing, but with the URL, you can also upload a file to check if it is malicious or not. It does checks using, I think, 50 or 60 different antiviruses, the light versions of them. There's Have I Been Pwned? This is the collection of data breaches. So if you just put your email address here, you can see whether or not it has been part of any of the data breach and how many, which one, etc. And then lastly, there's penteststandard.org. This has nice methodology, like if you're just starting off with penetration testing, what to do, and different terminologies, etc. Alright, coming to the actual CTF challenge itself, this is the link. We can provide this link to you. This is essentially you can download this challenge offline, work through it, try and obviously break the code, and you need to then get back to us with a write-up of how you solved it and your solution, right? And this will be used to then select participants for the other redeeming CTF that will happen at Hackathon.
3 challenges. The first one is the secure innovation, the normal hackathon where you're coming up with a solution. The second challenge is whether you are going to be a CTF red team. And then the third one is CTF blue team. And all the resources that have been presented there today, we will avail those to you. So it is crucial that you are also on Sonke, but we will be providing more guidance as we go to lunch. Without any further ado, let's get started with my good buddy there.
My name is Nitin Naidu. I am the CEO and founder of Snow Technologies. Snow Technologies is a cyber defense firm based in South Africa, but we service the world. We also represent South Africa in like multiple awards, and we've been lucky enough to win a couple of awards. That said, we've got 3 challenges for you guys. The 3 challenges are going to be downloadable. Tiani will give you guys the details, etc. You're going to download it off the web, and then there's a solution email address where you send your solutions to. And I was going to talk to you guys about, okay, well, how do we solve these problems, and how do we create these solutions? So the first question somebody's going to have in their mind is, okay, well, I'm assuming this is the first question you have in mind, right? So is this a technical sort of challenge, or can this be done by a non-technical person? This is the first problem that I want to help you guys with. Sometimes there's this mental block when it comes to the solution. You know, you guys I'm sure all you guys have used the Windows operating system, right? You guys ever seen the blue screen of death? It's when the window crashes and goes blue, and there's this light gray writing. Everybody's seen the blue screen of death at some point. I should hope so, right? Or maybe it was before your guys' time. Tiani, you can remember the blue screen of death, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I heard you say yes in the background there. Okay, cool. So, you know, the first thing we look at it when we see it is like, oh my word, what happened? I'm never going to understand that. You know, that's how we all react to it, right? Even me, right? And one day, somebody told me, you know, while I was going through the ranks, my boss, actually, who's like, he set the path for me to be where I am today. I'll actually give you his name. He's Roelof Temme, right? And he's the creator of Perturba, right? If you guys have ever used Maltego, he wrote Maltego. He's absolutely amazing, right? So, you know, the problem is that text is like cognitive overload for you, right? And immediately your brain tells you, do not go there. Do not even try to understand this thing you're seeing in front of you. You have no chance. And that's a little bit like what this exercise is going to feel like when you just start. The truth of the matter is, a lot of the things are really easy to understand. It's the mental block of your mind telling you cannot do this. Whether you're technical, non-technical, whether you're a programmer, you're not a programmer, whether you're a high school student, and you know you basically just know how to install an application on a computer, and that's about it. You can do this exercise, right? You should be able to do all three. All right. So the first part of the exercise is getting past that mental block that, oh, this is a technical exercise. This is absolutely not a technical exercise. It's a technical activity, yeah, maybe, but it is not a technical exercise. And it is designed to be easy for technical and non-technical people. So you download the files, the 4 PCAP files, and when the Telspace guys perform an attack, what happens is we as the blue team are the only things between them, the attacker, and the asset which they're trying to attack, right? So we just kind of sit in the middle of this communication, and it's our job to detect Telspace's activity. We call that threat detection. Sorry, I'm going to pause for 1 second. Tiani, what time did I start? So I'm supposed to finish at 2, right? 2 p.m.?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So what we see go through the network is exactly what you're going to download. It's called a PCAP file. The PCAP file is the actual recording of the network traffic traveling between Telspace and the target that they're going to hit, right? So you guys are going to download and you're going to be able to see, albeit after the fact, Telspace attacking a machine, right? Now, you're going to have to make sense of that. You're going to download an application called Wireshark. I'm going to, since I can't present, I'm going to send Tiani all the tools you're going to need, and we're going to send you a link to the tools. It works on any platform. It'll work on Windows, it'll work on Linux, it'll work on Mac. Don't worry about that. You go to the website, you download it, it's free, right? You go file open, and you open that file, and then immediately you will see blue screen of death. Okay? You're going to see a whole lot of data you do not think you understand. But I guarantee you it is absolutely understandable. You're going to start with the first challenge. What you're going to do is you're going to look really closely, piece by piece, one line at a time, okay, that you see on the screen. You're going to think you don't understand it, but very quickly what you're going to see is you start to understand, right? Because you start to understand, hey, I actually think I know what's going on there. Then what I want you to do is I want you to right-click on it, and you're going to go and you're going to say follow stream, and you're going to say follow TCP stream. TCP is a protocol, you know, you've got TCP and you've got UDP. UDP is like what we use for video and everything, where we don't need the guaranteed delivery. TCP is the protocol that we use when we need guaranteed delivery. TCP is a protocol that I think you're going to use for most of your attacks or your researching these exercises. And all I want you to do is then understand what is going on. Once you understand what is going on, Dalspace also spoke about the MITRE frame. Now there's an attack frame. It's called the attack frame. And inside the attack framework, you can go to the attack framework now, as a matter of fact. And if you go search, you land on the page and you go search. I was actually going to show you guys how to do this, but the screen sharing is not working. You're just going to type in password, and it'll give you every kind of attack on the password. By the way, the first attack you're going to be looking at has something to do with passwords. Okay, so you're going to go to the attack framework, you're going to type password, and all you're going to find for me is you're going to find for me the attack pattern that matches the pattern you're seeing. Okay, now once you find that attack pattern, you're going to go in and you're going to see, oh, what's the defenses? Right, and then you're going to answer the question. And the question is, what attack is it? How do you know it's that attack? And what do you think would be the defenses? Now don't let the framework's a guide. You've got an interesting idea on how you can better defend against it. Please, by all means, go in, put it in. We'd love to see it. And for those guys who make it to the actual final hackathon, hopefully I'll get to see you there. If I don't, my team will see you there. And they will teach you how then to write code to detect it. Right? It's really not that difficult. We taught the team last year and they started writing it on day one. Granted, they were a technical bunch, but this is not a technical exercise. For those students who may be selected, who don't have any coding experience or coding background, we will walk you through this process as using Secure by Design, which I'm sure Steve Jump has mentioned to you guys. You don't have to code defensive solutions. As a matter of fact, today I spent most of my time designing defensive solutions for customers, right? So you're either going to go the Secure by Design route, or you're going to be the guy who codes the design, converts the design into something tangible on a technical level, on electronics. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at the hackathon.